My daughter's walking the dog. She does the brunt of the walking because my son's the new meds they have him on, he's sleeping all the time. So fast forward, and he start. I don't know what it is. People, I don't know why people are gonna do this, but throw food on the floor, out on the grass, or maybe food fell out of the garbage because we are near the dumpster. I don't know. But he keeps trying to eat food, and so we have to pull him. Well, I don't do the walking because he'll break my back, but the kids will pull him away. The leash got tangled in his leg, and not the back leg, the front leg. And my daughter took her chance to just unravel him, and when she went to unravel him, he latched on to her hand and would not let go. And my daughter's pulling and pulling, and he's just, and I hear this horrible scream, and I was like, what was that? And so I hear it again, and I'm like, oh my goodness, is that my daughter? And then I heard it again. The third time I ran outside. I was like, what is going on? And I see all this blood. Blood dripping everywhere. Blood all over her clothes. Blood all over her hands. I see an open gash. I see the dog scared. I guess he remembers when he used to get hit for biting. And I was in my pajamas. After what happened with Thanksgiving, that we had to do so much during that week. I wanted to make sure I had no appointments, and I was so happy that the 2 weeks before Christmas I had no appointments, and I had projects that I wanted to work on. I wanted to get my kids' budgets done, but just try to clean up the desk, clean my brushes. I had a project I was working on, like an index. That's what I was trying to make, like an index. I had this project that I was going to work on. I was like, for these next 2 weeks, I could work on my house. I wanted to just rearrange certain things, make it neater, make it nicer for Christmas. This was the first Christmas here. I was so excited that whole week. We got out the Christmases, to be honest, have been depressing. When the kids were little, it was fun, but then you're not with your family as they get older. When we moved to Texas, it just wasn't. Nobody was into it, especially you moving away from the cold, and nobody's really decorating. It's hot. There's no snow, and so this was like I was really excited for this Christmas. This is our Christmas in our new apartment. We got out all our decorations. We had just finished decorating, and I was I couldn't sleep. So I was really tired that morning, so I was dragging myself. I didn't have any makeup on. I was in my pajamas. I was just really dragging myself and thinking, okay, now that we finished decorating, I'm going to work on my brushes. I'm going to, again, do a little bit of cleaning up in the bedroom, get things a little bit more organized in there. Because, things were let go since I was sick. We were all really sick, and because we had a relapse. So, things were just, and so I was just really looking forward. The first few days of last week we decorated. I was so happy. And then, I was looking forward to working on projects and getting my house in order and stuff in order. And I see my daughter's blood everywhere. And I ran to go get my pocketbook, get my keys. I just threw on like a dress, a raggedy dress that I have that I only wear around the house. And I get my keys, and the car is not there. My husband had to use it to get some stuff for work. I'm panicking. I'm calling him. I'm hysterical. And as I get a closer look at my daughter's gash, had holes. It was all, you can see all the meat. She had holes underneath, holes on top, an open meat gash just hanging out with blood. And I'm just hysterical. I'm like, the lady, my neighbor, I tell you, I do not have the best neighbors here. The lady downstairs saw She heard the screaming, saw the blood, saw the hysterical. She offered to drive me, but only if I cover Stephanie's hand because she didn't want blood in her car. Her car's black. You wouldn't have seen it. When she opened up the car door, her car looked funky. It was like dirty with like food in it because she's got little kids. It was filthy. And she's worried about blood on black. It's not going to show. She wasn't like pouring blood. It was dripping, but not like pouring. So I'm coming back to my, calling for my son to throw me down a towel so that I can wrap her up. And when we go to wrap her up, my daughter's feet are soaked in blood because she dripped so much blood. Well, you got to clean your daughter's feet. I can't let you into my car like that. As I was going back to get a wet washcloth, my husband arrived, thank God. And I'm not really familiar. It's not like before we were in a hospital district. We are not in a hospital district. And I've noticed little tiny emergency centers, but there's no real hospitals. I don't know where to take her. So the lady downstairs says, go to Memorial Hermann, which is near the highway, which we live near the highway. So, in the time that I was panicking and hysterical, where my husband came like within 10 minutes, but to me it seemed like an eternity. We figured out how to get there without having to go all around the highway and all this stuff. So it took us 5 minutes to get there, and I was wondering why my husband came because I felt bad that he would have to leave work, and I could have handled it. But I'm glad he came because I was like hyperventilating. I was hysterical crying. I barely could talk. She was in all this pain. So she kept saying, it hurts so bad, it hurts so bad. And the first thing that came to my mind as soon as I saw that gash was he's going to have to be put down. Do you know how many kids play here? It's like if all the kids in the complex play outside my door. That was the first thing that came to my mind. And my hysterical crying was that I knew I was going to have to put him down. He was just getting so grumpy. He was limping. He wasn't feeling well. And he wasn't even 10 yet. His birthday is the day after mine, so he would have been 10 years old in March. He wasn't even quite 10 yet. And I'm like, I felt like I told his body, maybe his body was just deteriorating early. Maybe whatever insanity was in his brain was getting worse. But I was crying mostly for him. And at the hospital, they said, you have to report this to animal control. And I was like, I wonder why, because it's our own dog. But I called them. I called them. And I asked them, how does the process work for putting down a pet? Because I want to be there, I was just hysterical crying. And he says, we charge about $120, and it's because we have to dispose of them. And he said, but we're for the city of Pearland, but you are in another district of Pearland, we can't help you. So, they were, reiterating at the saying we had to call animal control. When a dog bites, we have to call them. And I guess maybe some law here or something. And, so when after being, like 3 or 4 hours in the hospital, them stitching her up, giving her pain medications, cleaning it out, giving me the instructions on what I had to do, I come home and I get on the phone. I'm looking for a shelter. Not ASPCA. I know that I'll have to surrender him and again leave him to them, and I can't be there with him when the process happens. And he has these separation anxiety, so if I was going to do this, I wanted us to be able to be with him every step of the way. But I said, to avoid doing this, maybe I've heard that sometimes you can find a pet sanctuary, and I know I have not been successful in the past of finding one, and I know once there was one years ago in Pennsylvania, I think. So I'm trying to look up pet sanctuaries, or pet shelters, and they're all telling me you have to. They directed my call straight to animal control. That's what they did, and the woman I spoke to was saying, you're gonna have to put them down, but we're in another district. And I'm like, so they finally connected me to the animal control to my district, and the officer came to my house. And thank goodness my house was decent at this point. And I just told her, look, my house isn't perfect. I've been in the emergency room all day. I've been on the phone for another hour or so, and then I had to wait for her. Meanwhile, I haven't been able to get out of the house to get my daughter's meds, and we had no, food in the house. It was grocery day. And so I just, told her, look, whatever mess you find, please excuse, and she was like, oh, don't worry about it. And she came, and she was, friendly. She wasn't mean. And she said that we didn't have to put them down. And then came the racket. We keep them for 10 days under quarantine. That's what we have to do. And then we observe him for rabies. I was like, he doesn't have rabies. He's had all his shots. He's had his rabies shot if not in January, it was last July. Oh, well, this is December. And I said, no, the rabies shots are good for 3 years. And she says, well, can you show me proof? Don't ask me how I didn't have the proof, because I am meticulously keeping records of everything. I must have when we moved, I must have put up the bulk of stuff, because I do have some files that I put away in the garage, so that must have been where it was. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to find them. I had just finished getting all the decorations, and there's a mess in there because it's so much smaller. And my husband uses it, for his tools and, the traffic of him getting his stuff for work. So I called PetSmart. That's where his records are. And she confirmed to the woman that he's up to date on his rabies that got until 2016. But she was insisting that it doesn't matter. He could still get it. And that I would have to pay, I think, something like $1,000. She didn't give me the exact amount, but that I would have to pay she said a lot of money. Later on, after I talked, I found out some more information. I, said, look, you hear he's got his rabies. What is my alternative? And, I could not imagine him suffering like that for 10 days. They observed him for 10 days to make sure he didn't have rabies. Because everybody was telling me in the in the clinic and the officers I spoke to that rabies is incurable, and that it's almost certain death, and they had to make sure, and blah blah blah. And so I said, what's the alternative? She says he has to have a rabies test, and I have to have it done within 3 days. So I'm thinking, oh, well, it's nice of her to say I didn't have to. She kept saying, you don't have to put him down, but okay, so he has to get a rabies test. But she says, are you sure that's the way you want to go? Because what she wanted was to take him for the quarantine. And, to put him down. And I knew I had no choice. The damage that he did to my daughter, the way he's been acting, all the kids that play outside, he's uncontrollable, unpredictable. And because my husband works here, they knew exactly what happened. And it went all the way up to the main office, district office, the information. And they knew they would tell me I had to get rid of him. And she told me, there is no way. I guess it's the law down here, whatever. You are not allowed to give that dog away. Under no circumstances are you allowed to give that dog away. So there went my chance of even finding a pet sanctuary. So basically, I can let her have him for 10 days while he has a nervous breakdown, while he definitely is going to bite them because he don't want to be there, and he was going to suffer from anxiety attack. He has separation anxiety. My husband didn't want him here anymore. My daughter was petrified to be around him. I was keeping him out on the patio because I was afraid he would kill Juju. I knew that I couldn't live under that stress of worrying they was going to bite somebody, become unpredictable, go crazy like that. People, if the kids play around here, play around the garbage, or if somebody throws food, which sometimes they do, if they try to pet him while he gets this food, it's obvious we can't control him. Could you imagine? The disaster? So we all, we had discussed it all together, and we just realized that this was the only responsible thing we can do. and that it was honestly be better for him to be put down than to be put into quarantine. And and she was telling me it's gonna be way cheaper to put him down. But she kept saying you don't have to. You just have to give him a rabies test. And so I wasn't really, something, there was like something I wasn't understanding. So she said, fine, just make sure that rabies test is done. He has to have that rabies test. And I'm like, but I'm putting him down. Why does she say he has to have that rabies test? Just make sure they contact me. Here's my number, blah, blah, blah. Give it to them. You know what? PetSmart. I figured, his records are there. Let's do it there. You know that PetSmart hung up on me? That was so freaking rude. When I called them back and I said, look, I mean, I'm hysterical crying. I'm hysterical crying all day Thursday, all day Friday, all day Thursday, because I knew that this was a decision we would have to make. My son is hysterical. I'm hysterical. My husband just didn't want him near, my daughter anymore because she usually was the one that once a year, mostly her. And, so I called PetSmart. I figured, this is where he's been going most of his life. Let's just take care of it there. And they were all mad and said, we don't do that, and like hung up. I'm like, but I have a case number from animal control. And they like hung up on me, and I said, that is so freaking rude. And so I had stopped taking my dog to PetSmart. I boycotted them, and his nails were claws. I mean, really long. So there was a vet across the street from me, and I took him there to cut his nails when we first moved here back. I think it was in September. So I called them, and they got all the information from animal control. And again, nobody's really telling me what a rabies test is. But they wanted to charge me like 3 times more than what everyone was telling me it was supposed to be. So someone told me of a vet that they use. I mean, we're in a really bad place financially. So I called another place, and they said, we're not understanding what you mean by a rabies test. There's no such thing as a rabies test. I said, huh? And I said, well, I just want to know how much you charge for the euthanasia. We could talk about the rabies test after, but is it true that it's 1/3 of the price of this other place? They said, no. I don't know why everybody's telling me that it was only $100. Every place is charging $300 now. So, we were talking about getting his, I said, what, forget. I said, we need to speak to this officer he spoke to. We don't understand. There's no such thing as a rabies test. I figured it out later on. And, so I just said, look, my dog went across the street. This is across the street. I'm in too much pain to be calling around about my dog's, death. So I just stuck with the lady across the street, the vet across the street. And we were just hysterical crying all day last Friday, hysterical crying. Even my son, who was fighting with us tooth and nail at first, realized that it was what was best. Because he was just really, he was just acting like he was old, and he was only 9. I thought dogs last like a good 15 years. And even my son finally came to the realization he's not well. Maybe this is what's best. So, we were just crying hysterical that whole day. That day was torture. Waiting for 3 o'clock. My husband said we did it. We could have did it for 1, but we did it for 3 because we thought maybe my husband would go. And he was like, he said he wasn't gonna go. So we were just waiting and waiting and waiting. And then I had to go get some meds for my daughter. I spent the rest of Thursday all morning in the hospital, all afternoon, because of this. I had to wait on this officer, and we were dealing with her. And I spent, until about 6 o'clock waiting for her meds that they said was going to be ready in an hour. And 2 hours later, still not ready. And I'm ready to flip out on somebody because my daughter's in so much pain. So the day before, so that I had to go pick up some more meds. I forgot I had to pick up some more meds for her. I just couldn't sit here and cry. So me and my daughter kind of stayed out for a couple of hours. We went to go get her meds. We, went to go, mail a package to my husband's goddaughter. Even went to Sephora I get a coupon every year. I didn't buy anything though. Everything, my stomach was in knots. I couldn't, everything, I was smelling the perfumes, I was nauseous. All I could think about was 3 o'clock. The waiting was torture. When we got there, well, first of all, my husband called me and said, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there. So it was good that we waited for 3. So he calls me up, half an hour before. And so we all go. And it's torture. And we wanted the ashes, but it was $500. With the rabies test, it was going to be like $550. And I mean, our credit cards are all maxed out. I mean, because we need them right now at this point to survive. And we were like, we can't afford it. But they do, what they said they could give us, which was only $15, was a paw print. But they said it wouldn't be ready for 2 weeks. And I hope to God it is really his paw print and not something generic. But the moment we got there, we are hysterical. We are hysterical. And they said most important thing for me was, because of his anxieties, that we could be with him the whole time. I did not want him to suffer any more than he had to. And right before we were supposed to leave, he was just outside sleeping so beautifully and so peacefully. I did not want to disturb him. But all I could think about watching my daughter's blood seeping through all the bandages that we had on her, because I had to change her bandages. All I could think about as all those kids playing outside is, what if it had been one of them? What if he had latched onto their throat? What if he had latched onto my daughter's throat? And it's my daughter's right hand. You guys know she has this ability, and her drawing is like breathing to her. And she was so miserable because she couldn't do what comforted her the most. And I just knew this is something we had to do. And they wanted to take him to the back first and get him set up with an IV and with a I can't think straight. That stuff that they put on the mouth. They explained to us that they could bite, they could convulse, all these horrible things that could happen. And we're just dying, and it's taking forever. And they wanted to take him from us, and we said no. We have to be with him every step of the way. And so they couldn't bring us to the back. It was too small. So they had to bring us to a room and lay him on the floor. And it was taking forever. It took them an hour before they actually came in. I'm like, this waiting is torture. We're prepared. We got him calm. We were able to put that thing on muzzle. It was covering his nose, so we were able to lift it from his nose. I'm just so glad we could be there for him. His anxiety was through the roof. I was just so glad that we could be there with him, because I could just imagine this muzzle covering his nose. He couldn't breathe that well. His anxiety was through the roof, the poor thing. I think he would have died of a heart attack before the process even began. But we were there with him. We fixed his muzzle. My son was on the floor with him, holding him and hugging him the whole time. We were just hysterical, just waiting and waiting. They said they wanted to give us time, and I said, look, this is torture. Please, let's just do this, because my husband was starting to change his mind, and I'm like, you're not the one who has to deal with the walking. My daughter didn't want to walk him anymore. I would not have the strength to control him if he tried to attack a child. Do you just realize the consequences that would happen? So I was like, we have to do this. We had already accepted it, and to say no, and then later on changing our mind, no, it was just torture. It was like, when are they coming? Because we just this is just too torturous for us. So they finally came like 45 minutes later and started explaining the whole process to us. And I was like, oh God, please don't let us. They were like, you sure you want to be here? It could get really ugly. And I'm like, we are going to stay with him every second. We did not want him to suffer any more than he had to with his anxiety issues. So, man, it took them forever to get the IV in. They couldn't, they just couldn't. I guess the where they put it, they couldn't get it right. It was just like every second was just a torturous eternity. And finally, the doctor comes in and she said, we're gonna put him to sleep first, and then we'll inject him. And she said, before I inject him with the sleep, put him to sleep, this is your last chance. And we just already knew, after discussing it, after what he did, that it was our only alternative. It was our only choice. We really didn't have a choice, because the people from this job was not going to let us keep him. The management company. Like I said, the news went to the district manager. I couldn't live with that constant fear that he was going to hurt somebody else. I mean, you got 3-year-olds playing outside. She said he's going to fall asleep pretty quickly. And he did. He did. When she injected him with the thing that makes them sleep, he went straight down because he wouldn't lay down. He was right by our feet, and his head was towards my son on the floor. And all I kept doing was petting him and petting him and petting him and saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And then she said, no, I'm going to inject him. What this does is it's very potent. It stops the heart. And she did. And we were just hysterical. I just kept petting him, what I really, really wanted to do. But because of my bad back and my weight, I couldn't get on the floor and get back up again. What I wanted to do so bad was just lay down and hug him. But he was by my feet. I just kept petting him and saying, I'm sorry. And that it's over now. And now he could be in heaven. And that I'll see him again one day. Even my husband, and to be honest, I didn't want him to come because I couldn't handle him crying too. He whimpered. My husband whimpered when it happened. But he controlled himself. He's a man, I guess. Me and my daughter were hysterical. And my son was just on the floor, hugging him. And, the vet was so reassuring. She kept saying, I understand this is hard. And I understand that you made this decision because you don't want him to hurt anybody else. And she was just so sweet, the vet. And she said, I'll give you let you alone with him. My son said, can I please take the muzzle off? She said, of course. And he took my dog's leash, his chain, his collar off, so we would have that. And she left us alone, and I knew I couldn't go on the floor. So I just would kiss my hand and kiss his head, and kiss my hand and kiss his head, and telling him that I loved him and saying goodbye. It was so peaceful. It was so quick and peaceful, thank God. It was so, because she put the stethoscope to his chest, and she said he's gone. It was one of the hardest things I ever did in my life. Then my son asked if he could be alone with him. And we left my son alone with him. But what I what I found strange, was they didn't take any test. They didn't take a rabies test. And I kept saying, aren't you going to draw blood for the rabies and blah, blah, blah? And they said, no, we do it after. We do it after. And I'm like, but doesn't the blood, like, stop? Like, it doesn't coagulate or so, whatever they call it? You know, how could they take the blood? They said, don't worry, we'll take care of everything. And you'll have your paw print in a week. So I left, and my son had his time alone, and all we did was cry. And cry and cry and cry. And we were supposed to do groceries, and usually grocery day we'll get some, we'll eat out, but we can't afford expensive restaurants, so usually they'll eat, at one of the, fast food places, and I'll just pick up a sushi when we do groceries or something. I couldn't even eat. My son couldn't eat. So my husband just made himself a sandwich, and me and my daughter couldn't eat. My son finally got hungry. He just made himself a sandwich. And so everybody just made themselves something to eat, and then we did groceries so we could at least have some food.